The year is 1998. The Sony PlayStation console is hitting full stride with big titles being released by the biggest video game developers of that time. New IPs and ideas were flourishing, and Capcom had already achieved massive success with Resident Evil, a survival horror game that defined the genre and sold incredibly well in all territories. Many companies had already made horror games riding on the success of Capcom, with not only new ideas but returning classics. The sequel, Resident Evil 2, is released that year and manages to surpass all expectations, becoming a critical and commercial hit. The golden age of survival horror had begun, and Konami's answer to Resident Evil was already well into development. Konami, best known in a previous console generation for the Castlevania series, the Contra series, and licensed Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles games, was making a successful transition into the new era of 3D rendered graphics. They had scored big recently with Hideo Kojima's Metal Gear Solid. The company had been known to strategically market games specifically for Western audiences in the past. This was the concept the company approached producer Gozo Kitao with. A survival horror game with a different look and feel in terms of gameplay and story. A group of Konami employees who had failed with previous projects and were close to leaving the company were brought together for one last shot at redemption. Helming the Silent Hill project was Keiichiro Toyama, whose previous credits included the cult hit Snatcher. Although Toyama wasn't a fan of horror in a general sense, he was interested in UFOs and the occult, both of which would find their way into the project. In an interview with Polygon, he stated, "I never liked the really bloody shockfest sort of horror film, so I was kind of at a loss when we started out. I really didn't think Silent Hill was that much of a horror game, and it was kind of a surprise to me when people told me it was scary after it came out." This would be his first time directing as well as writing. A recent Tama Art University graduate, Masahiro Ito, was responsible for backgrounds and creature designs, a key element in the creation of the nightmarish setting for the game. His primary source of inspiration for the monsters came from figurative artist Francis Bacon, who would be a primary inspiration for all his subsequent work. Fellow Tama Art alumni, Takayoshi Sato was the character designer and CGI director, single-handedly making all the cutscenes by himself. A feat he accomplished by living in the Konami offices for 2.5 years in order to use all of the computers during off hours. Sato would consider making the facial emotions very challenging, since he had no models to base his facial structures on. And finally, Akira Yamaoka rounded out the original core team as the composer, after a colleague left the project previously. His primary influences were Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails fame and Angelo Badalamenti, who frequently collaborated with director David Lynch. Both influences can be heard heavily in the soundtrack's use of industrial and somber melodies, and Yamaoka's name would be associated with the franchise for years to come. Although the newly formed team had no solid concept of what the game should be when they started, they were sure they wanted to make a unique psychological horror experience. And fortunately, Konami gave them the creative freedom they needed to accomplish this. Silent Hill for the Sony PlayStation is released on January 31st, 1999 in North America, March 4th in Japan, and August 1st in Europe. story centers on protagonist Harold Harry Mason and his adopted daughter, Cheryl. After insistence from his daughter, the two go on a vacation to the quiet resort town of Silent Hill. Due to car troubles, they make it to the outskirts of the town at night, when a strange apparition forces them off the road. Harry awakens to find himself alone within the fog-covered town with no one else in sight. A fleeting vision of Cheryl running in the distance leads him further into the strange town. With everything turning inexplicably dark, Harry has his first startling experience within an alleyway, and we get a taste of the dangers the town has to offer.
This? What's going on here?
Harry wakes up in a diner and meets Sybil Bennett, a police officer from the nearby town of Brams, who made her way into Silent Hill to investigate the cease of communication from the town's police station. With Harry determined to get back to his search, Sybil warns him and hands him a gun as she leaves to try to get help. When suddenly, static starts coming out of a nearby radio.
What's that? This is not a dream. What's happening to this place?
Armed with a gun, a flashlight, and a radio which warns him when monsters are around with static, Harry returns to the nightmarish streets of Silent Hill. A clue found nearby points him to the Midwich Elementary School. But to make it there, he has to traverse streets full of air screamers and eventually groaners. Within the dark, abandoned school, Harry is attacked by the Grey Children while making his way through eerie halls and empty classrooms.
Where am I?
After solving a puzzle in the school's clock tower, the skies darken again, and Harry's surroundings shift to a more harsh, twisted environment. Finally making his way to the boiler room, Harry faces his first boss battle, Splithead. Defeating the creature makes the school grounds revert to normal as a church bell in the distance starts sounding.
Who in the hell was that? Were you ringing that bell?
I've been expecting you.
Harry finds his way to the church, where he meets a strange old woman named Dahlia Gillespie. She talks to him in abstract, leaving Harry confused, but gives him an item called the Flowers and points him to the Alchemilla Hospital.
It can break through the walls of darkness.
At the hospital, Harry meets Michael Kaufman, a man who claims to work there and is just as confused about the town's current state as he is. Continuing on with his search, Harry soon finds himself in the nightmare version of the hospital, where the former nurses have become violent monsters. There is, however, one nurse who hasn't succumbed to the transformations. He finds a young nurse named Alessa Garland, who's relieved to see him, and also appears to have been unconscious during the town's transformations.
When I came to, everyone was gone. It's awful.
She offers no leads to Cheryl, as the familiar sirens start to sound again, causing Harry to pass out once more.
Damn. My head.
What's wrong? Harry? Harry, let me help you. Harry?
Was I dreaming?
You were too late.
Upon awakening, Harry is with Dahlia again, and everything has reverted to normal. She now tells him of the crests on the ground he's encountered, and how they should be stopped at all cost. She leaves, but not before telling him he should head to the other church in town.
Don't let it be completed.
Harry!
On his way there, though, he finds an open
I'm
antique
glad you're
shop where he
okay.
regroups with Sybil, who tells him she had just seen a girl out by
I
the
went
lake
after her,
area.
but she vanished. I don't know about your daughter, but
And you just let her go? Where was it?
there was no place for her to go. The road has been obliterated.
What? So then Cheryl...
It was like she was walking on thin air.
Searching further into the antique shop, Harry discovers an altar, shedding some light on the cult activity that has been happening in the small town of Silent Hill.
What the?
Harry!
Where am I?
Appearing to be in a dreamlike state, Lisa gives him some insight into Dahlia Gillespie, the town's cult, and the strange things that have been happening in the town's previous years.
But I heard her kid died in a fire, and supposedly she's been crazy ever since. Weird occult stuff. Black magic, that kind of thing.
Was that another dream?
Utterly confused, Harry discovers the antique shop and all of his surroundings have once more been transformed into the otherworld. Determined to make his way back into the hospital to meet with Lisa, Harry must now confront wormheads and rompers. His only path leads him through the town's shopping area.
Daddy? Help me. Please? Where are you?
Cheryl!
To get through the mall, Harry will need to battle the worm-like twin feeler.
Harry!
Glad you're okay.
Lisa tells him how to reach the lake resort area, but not before giving him a cryptic send-off.
How about coming with me?
No. Somehow I feel I'm not supposed to leave this place.
Before continuing, though, Harry's path is blocked, and he's forced to fight off the twin feeler creature once more, but this time in its new form. Harry's path to the lake takes him through the dark and dangerous waterways. And one of the factors that can determine the ending of the game, you can choose to save Kaufman and indirectly aid him in getting a red liquid called the aglaophytus.
Give me that. You want to get yourself killed? Get out of here.
This will also reveal that Kaufman knows much more about the situation than he's admitting. While rushing to the lake area, Harry finally experiences the transformation of the town into the nightmarish otherworld, right before his eyes. Reaching a boathouse, Harry meets up with Sybil once more and explains what he thinks is going on.
Sybil! This may sound really off the wall, but listen to me. At first, I thought I was losing my mind. It's not me. This whole town. It's being invaded by the otherworld. By a world of someone's nightmarish delusions come to life.
This is until they're interrupted by Dahlia, warning them that the Mark of Samael is nearing completion and that all will be lost, and that Harry's daughter will be sacrificed if they don't act in time. Dahlia tells Harry to head to the lighthouse to stop the demon that's in the form of the little girl they've been seeing, while Sybil has to head to the local amusement park to stop the other seal there.
Sybil, thanks.
You will need to use it. The flowers. Only with that can you stop it.
What about Sybil?
But upon reaching the top of the lighthouse, Harry finds that the girl has already made one of the 2 last seals needed. Now he can only hope Sybil and him can prevent the last one from being made at the amusement park. But little does he know, Sybil is already in trouble. In one of the other major decisions that can determine the outcome of the story, you face a parasitized and possessed Sybil and can either kill her or try to save her with a liquid found earlier in the game. But unfortunately, Sybil's official fate is death at the hands of Harry.
Hold it right there. I don't know who you are or what you're trying to do, and I don't care. Let Cheryl go. That's all I ask. What?
Upon finally reaching the girl, Harry is halted by her powers when all of a sudden Dahlia's Flower Rose artifact starts reacting to her.
What is this? Give me back my daughter.
We meet at last, Alessa. This is the end of your little game.
Mama?
Now you're half indebted to this man for his help.
Hey, what are you talking about?
Alessa, my dear little girl, there is one thing left I need you to do for me.
No! Get away from me!
Everything is ready. Let's go home now. Ah!
The unknown force once again sends Harry back to the hospital, back to Lisa.
So I went to look in the basement. But while I was down there, I got this weird feeling. Like something happened there. But I can't quite remember somehow.
Harry decides to find out once and for all of the secrets hiding in the basement. The visions and clues he finds paint a disturbing portrait of a poor, abused girl named Alessa Gillespie. A girl with immense psychic powers who had suffered at the hands of classmates, adults, and even her own mother.
Come along. No, I don't want to. Do what Mommy tells you now. I don't want to do it.
This ultimately led to her being sacrificed by her mother and the town cult known as the Order, by being burned alive in order to bring forth the rebirth of God through her.
Everything is going according to plan, sheltered in the womb.
Still has an unusually high fever. Eyes don't open. Getting a pulse, but just barely breathing. Her skin is all charred. Even when I change the bandages, the blood and pus just start oozing through. Why? What is keeping that child alive?
Harry,
Lisa, what's the matter with you?
I get it now.
Eventually,
Why I'm
Lisa
still
also
alive,
came
even
to her very own realization.
I'm not the only one who's still walking around. I'm the same as them. I just hadn't noticed it before.
With journals left behind, Harry finds out Lisa was Alessa's personal nurse, a job she wanted to quit if it wasn't for a drug she was depending on that could only be given to her by the hospital's director, Michael Kaufman. Kaufman was also behind the trafficking of the addictive drug known as PTV to the whole town, all the while Alessa spent 7 years suffering in the basement.
Dahlia.
Well. To think you'd make it this far.
Where's Cheryl? What have you done to her?
Don't you see? She's right there.
Harry finally finds his daughter Cheryl in a room with Dahlia and a wheelchair-bound Alessa, covered in bandages. Cheryl turns out to be a split half of Alessa's soul, which manifested itself as a baby and was found 7 years prior by Harry and his now deceased wife. Dahlia Gillespie's plan had always been to rejoin the two souls and continue with the birth of God from the burned womb of Alessa, while Alessa was planning to use the seals to put an end to her life before her mother could succeed.
My daughter will be the mother of God.
With all the pieces in place, the god begins to manifest itself, just as Kaufman arrives and throws the Aglaophatus at it, releasing the incubus from Alessa. Dahlia meets her fate, and now it's in Harry's hands to put a stop to the god. Once he puts an end to the demon, Alessa hands Harry a newborn and shows him the exit before being consumed. The orthodox ending has Harry escaping Silent Hill finally, with the baby and a new beginning. Silent Hill became an instant survival horror classic, selling over 2 million copies. Praise was given to the immersive 3D setting, the disturbing soundtrack and sound effects, as well as to the creature design and the psychological horror elements. The multiple endings were also well received, including one finale where you can escape with Sybil, and another involving UFOs. On the other hand, the choppy voice acting and the tank controls were heavily criticized. Yet to this day, Silent Hill remains one of the pinnacle entries in early survival horror, and has inspired countless other games. With such a big success on their hands, naturally Konami would move forward to make Silent Hill into a franchise. And for Team Silent, there was no turning back now.
In my restless dreams, I see that town, Silent Hill. You promised you'd take me there again someday, but you never did.
In the next episode, we'll take a look back at the second outing to Silent Hill, and James Sunderland's personal journey to overcome the supernatural and himself.